hui hui mai nei, e mihi ana ki ngā tangata whenua o te rohi, nei Ngāti Whātua o Rake, tēnā koutou. Ko Douglas and Ongiwa, and I'm looking forward to being able to host this event. It's a great event that's been waited for a long time in terms of the incubation of this innovation fund. And it's my great pleasure to be hosting this event today alongside our ITS New Zealand group in terms of the things, and you've got the slides up here. So we're going to be introducing the Hoi ki angitū. I hope I've said that right in terms of the development, the innovation fund today. So it's a great pleasure, as I was saying before, that I'm able to introduce three ladies to speak, given the diversity. If you look around the room, I'm the odd person out up the front here, which is great to see, because we need to obviously do a lot more in terms of diversifying our industry. Welcome on board. So again, welcome on behalf of ITS New Zealand and Waka Kotahi. ITS New Zealand, as you'll see on the slides behind, is the peak body in New Zealand for intelligent transport systems and future transport solutions, advocating for education, linkages to industry, government and research organisations. And we think it's a sponsored to join, obviously, ITS New Zealand. It's a membership organisation, and so we thank our sponsors for being able to come along to this event. So again, it's my great pleasure to welcome you all. I'm not going to take a lot of time in here other than to be hosting this session. The main focus obviously is Waka Kotahi, basically demonstrating and introducing the fund to you and to us. I will say that we will hold questions. There's going to be Liz is going to be speaking first, then Leone, and then Lee. Sorry, Lee and then Leone, the other way around. Change the order in the seating here. But please hold questions to the end because we'd like to go through. Otherwise, you're going to ask a question that somebody's already going to answer, and so we'll do that separately. So obviously, we have a lot of people online as well, and so we are going to encourage questions. Please put your questions in the chat room if you're online so that we can monitor those. Simon over here is the Executive Officer for ITS New Zealand. He'll be monitoring the chat room in terms of questions. And when it comes to questions times, we're going to try to alternate between the room and people online. So please keep them coming in and we'll have them going. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the speakers, and I'll go through the three speakers and then pass it over to the Waka Kotahi team. Okay. So firstly, Liz Maguire is the Chief Digital Officer for Waka Kotahi. She's relatively recently joined Waka Kotahi in the private sector and came from the private sector to the public sector. Liz is passionate about the power of digital for transformation and its potential to solve real problems like those facing our transport system. Liz believes that the Hoi ki angitū Innovation Fund presents a significant opportunity for New Zealand and all those who use our transport system. Lee on our far right here is the manager of, my left, your right, manager of the future transport at Waka Kotahi, and has been working in transport for over a decade after making the transition from law and policy work. She previously worked at the Ministry of Transport and has been, what, 2 years now, was it? 3? How many years in Waka Kotahi? Nearly 4. Oh my goodness, that shows my age, losing 8 years. Lee's passionate about the potential of technology and data to drive change in the transport sector and believes leveraging these tools can help us address challenges, including climate change and road safety outcomes. Again, Hoi ki angitū will enable collaboration between private and public sectors, something Lee has long been passionate about. And Leone Murphy in the middle has woven design thinking and innovation into her work throughout her career and is now applying that to transport. As manager of the innovation at Waka Kotahi, she sees Hoi ki angitū as an exciting opportunity to accelerate solutions through collective thinking. So with problem-solving methodology firmly grounded in human-centric design, Leone puts the needs of people and communities at the centre of her work. So with that, I'll pass over to Liz to introduce and take it from there. I'm going to get out of the way.
Doug, thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa, called Liz Maguire, tōku ingoa. I am the Chief Digital Officer at Waka Kotahi, and I've been here since October. So I know lots about delivering digital stuff for New Zealanders. I know nothing about transport and not really anything at all around government. So it's been a great learning experience, and I'm super excited to be with Waka Kotahi. I'm really, really delighted to be joining you to celebrate the launch of Hoiki angitū, our innovation fund. It's super exciting. And I wanted to just, before we get into the details, I wanted to just offer a few observations from my time since I've joined Waka Kotahi about the kind of business that we're in. My first observation is, oh my God, we've got some wicked problems that we have to solve, right? And so not just Waka Kotahi, but our transport sector and other people within Aotearoa. And two of our most wicked problems, first of all, relate to how do we keep people safe on the roads and how do we reduce that horrendous road toll that we have. And then the second one, which has been, I'm sure, very top of mind for people this week, is how do we take carbon out, and the emissions reduction plan coming out this week. And there's a really big ask for the transport sector there. So really, really big wicked problems that we've got to solve. Second observation, which again, you guys will all get, but was new to me, is that the timeframes, when you think about tech in the transport sector, the timeframes are a lot longer than what you would get in a normal tech job. You know, I had a bit of an aha moment when I went to Pika Pika to Otaki, where we're building a new highway there. And I went, right, so the roads that we're thinking about today, they're going to be being delivered towards the end of the decade. And who in a tech job thinks about things beyond kind of 3 years' time? Like, those horizons are actually quite a long time. And what that means is the possibilities become much more, much broader, and the options, the bets that we need to hedge become much more complicated. So timeframes, big deal really for us. And then my third observation is, oh my God, there's a lot of change coming, right? So you think, and you guys I'm sure are all involved in a lot of this change, but as we get smarter cars and more autonomous cars, as we get moves away from carbon producing vehicles, as we think about 5G and how that rolls out and where drones are and AI, and there's so much change coming. And I suspect it's going to be one of those cases of the change may take longer, but will be more significant than what we expect. So there's my three observations. And what does that mean? That means we need, it's more than it takes a village to raise a child, right? Like, we need lots of smart thinkers to help us solve the wicked problems and solve the time problems and help us figure out what the right solutions are going to be. And those smart thinkers, they're all over New Zealand. We have amazing smart thinkers and we have amazing innovation. And I'm really, really excited that what we've got with this innovation fund is absolutely going to help us face into some of these challenges and help us give a clearer view of where the future is going to be. So let's get going. Let's unleash it. Let's hear the details. Super excited. And I'm going to hand over to Lee now, I think. Yeah.
Thanks, that's perfect timing. And the slides. No slides, no presentation. Well, I can talk anyway. Well, yeah. So firstly, it's really nice to see some familiar faces in the room. It's been a really long time. The second thing is really great to hear that we've got so many people that have joined us online as well. And for me personally, it's a real pleasure to be here and to actually be launching Hoiki Angitū. For me, it's been something I've been working on with a small team of people at Waka Kotahi for a couple of years now. So to be talking about it and also the opportunity that it presents is quite a significant milestone. Do you want me to get it back? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to ad-lib while we're doing this. So Hoiki Angitū is a innovation fund and program that has been set up to support the private sector to accelerate and develop innovative transport solutions for transport and to help us solve some of those wicked transport problems that Liz referred to before. It's a $15 million fund, $15 million to operate and fund the actual program, and that's for the old-fashioned way for me. Hoiki Angitū is about paddling to opportunity. Hoi is the paddle, and it's our symbol for mahia, or doing the work, and represents opportunity, work, and success. Hoiki Angitū is about encouraging the innovation community to pick up their paddle, bring their ideas, and work alongside us to help shape the future of our land transport system. So what we're looking for is innovative ideas and solutions that have the potential to deliver real impact into our transport system. We're looking for ideas and solutions that are scalable, and we're looking to do that by changing the way in which we engage with private sector innovators, as well as broadening our private sector outreach. So actually, I'm just going to sorted. So when we started to design Hoiki Angitū, one of the first things we did was we went out and talked with innovators and with the innovation sector, and we asked for feedback on what we could do better. So what the sector asked for was that asked us to focus on the outcome, not the process, move from being a taker of technology to an enabler, provide a regulatory framework that removes hoops instead of making people jump through them, create an application process that works for government and the applicants, support new startups to prove their credibility, create space for real-world testing, offer enablement that is more than just money, and be transparent from the start. So be transparent about what we're trying to achieve, and be transparent around how we're going to grow and iterate the program and work with the sector to do that. I'm really sorry about the feedback. Is that still coming through? Yeah, sorry. So with this feedback in mind, we identified 3 objectives for the fund. The first was to catalyse the action needed to solve our most critical transport problems. The second objective was to enable innovators with the capabilities they need but cannot access on their own. And the third was to accelerate innovation by breaking down the barriers across the transport ecosystem. So in terms of who can apply for funding, you would have heard us talk a lot about the private sector, and we've grouped everyone into the private sector, but I also want to emphasise that the fund is also available to not-for-profit organisations, and we've given some examples up there of the sort of organisations that can apply and companies that can apply. Essentially, the fund is not available to local government, and it's not available to central government. So it's a private sector fund only. I can keep talking.
Please.
Okay. I can look at it here. So when we were designing the fund, we looked at a number of funds that are innovation funds in New Zealand, but we also looked at a number of funds, international funds as well. And what we did was we identified 5 core components that we believe will make the fund successful and deliver the outcomes that we're seeking from the fund. So the first component is centered around focus challenges. So that's being really specific about the problem that we're trying to solve. and being really clear to the sector about the challenge, so that thank you. So that they can respond to the challenge we've identified. The second component, which we think is really important in terms of delivering the fund, is supporting it through a hybrid operational team or an enterprise-wide team. And essentially what that means is that we will be drawing on expertise from across Waka Kotahi to help the sector navigate their way through transport regulations, through the Waka Kotahi systems and processes. And it also means that it will help us to remove some of those unnecessary barriers for innovators. And it means that we can bring them in at the right time when needed. And the team may change depending on the nature of the challenge and the responses that we receive. The third component is around being a connector. And we, again, thought it's really important in terms of the success of the fund. So that's making connections both within Waka Kotahi, but perhaps more importantly, really helping the successful applicants connect to people outside of Waka Kotahi. And that may become really important as their innovation develops and matures, and they may need to connect later on with another partner or into another fund or indeed another government agency. The fourth component, and that's really important to us, is around acceleration. And I want to be really clear that the fund and the support is for a 16-week period only. It's about unlocking an innovation and accelerating it. It's about maturing it and moving it from one phase to another. So it's not about funding something from early concept or early idea right through to commercialization. It is actually about moving it along and maturing it. And then finally, what was really important to us was that that there was some recognition for the innovator or innovation. So we want to showcase the innovation and where it's got to at the end of the 16-week period, so that again may raise the awareness for the innovation and again may support the innovator and innovation in terms of future partnerships. So why a challenge-based fund? Again, when we looked at overseas funds and looked at some of the funds in New Zealand, we decided that a challenge-based fund would best deliver the outcomes that we were seeking from the fund. In particular, challenge-based funds focus on specific problems. They allow for diverse and numerous applications. They're a tried and tested method of attracting new innovators to change the status quo. They attract a broad range of innovators whose approach to problem solving will likely be very different from one another. Challenge-based funds encourage incumbents to redirect their efforts or think about a problem in a new way, and they can lead to breakthrough solutions, the creation of new cohorts of innovators, and can result in systemic change. So the aim with the fund is to probably issue three, maybe four challenge rounds within the next 2 years, and we will issue different challenges for each funding round. And so for the first round of Hoiki angitū, we've announced 3 challenges. The first is how might we reduce the environmental impacts of transport infrastructure, construction, operation and maintenance activities through accelerating the use of recycled materials and sustainable practices. The second challenge is how might we integrate low emission first and last mile travel solutions into the public transport system to reduce climate impacts, congestion and vehicle dependency. And the third challenge is how might we provide underserved communities, including rural communities and those travelling outside normal commuting times, with greater access to safe, low emission and reliable modes of transport other than the private motor vehicle. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Leone to talk a little bit more about the application process.
Just want to quickly give you an overview of the process of applications that we go through. Trying to avoid the feedback. So the aim for us was to keep this as simple as possible. And we have got a very, very simple process here that I'm going to walk you through. So we've just launched the challenges. That was last week. We're also asking people to complete an expression of interest on the website. It is exactly that. It's not an application form and it's not mandatory either. There's a couple of reasons for doing this, is that it really will help us to gauge the level of interest and the potential number of proposals that we might receive, as well as to understand where they're coming from and what they might involve. The application process opens officially on the 7th of June. Throughout May and June, we will be available to answer questions. And there is a webinar next week on Wednesday, the 25th, 12:30. There's details on our website, and that will go into a bit more detail around the actual application form and fund. 4th of July is when we're actually going to be closing our application process. From there, we're going to go into an assessment period through July and August. And this involves engaging with subject matter experts internally across Waka Kotahi. And then we're taking that to a panel made up of internal and external members who will consider a shortlist. And they'll make a recommendation based on what and who should be funded. The recipients of the funding will be announced end of August. And after that's done, we'll then engage with those successful applicants regarding the activities for each project. Okay. And there will be a funding agreement that sets this out. Support and funding for this will last for 16 weeks. We're looking to start a new round of funding, so new challenges, February 2022.
Change that much.
Okay. So the assessment criteria, this is on the website, but I'm just going to go through some things on it. So on that criteria, we looked at other internationally and their assessment process and criteria to understand what was best practice. We're really aiming for a balance here between a criteria that gives us the information we need to inform a decision-making process, but also one that's still as simple as we can make it. We also have obligations as a Crown entity to meet, and we also have to align this, the criteria with the GPS on land transport investment. Just really want to also acknowledge that some of the applications will lean towards some of the criteria more than others, and we know that's going to happen and we expect that. Each criteria does have its own section on the application form with questions under each to be completed. So key dates then, we've launched our challenges, that was last week. Applications open on the 7th of June. They officially close on the 4th of July, and successful applicants will be announced at the end of August, with round one of the activities commencing in September. And just one more thing, yeah, please do sign up for the webinar if you haven't already. It's next Wednesday, details on the website. And if you need to email us to ask us questions, do go ahead and do that, innovation@nzta.gov.nz.
Thank you very much. And just to, can you put your hands together for getting through the administration of the things? We do apologise for the technology problems. We were talking before, and it amazes me that when we're talking about ITS New Zealand and the tech that we've gone through in the stages, that we still seem to not get PowerPoints to work properly and display. So that demonstrates some of the challenges that we have as an industry about making these things resilient and being able to always be working and what we expect them to do. So we're still learning. So with that, I'm going to take the chair or the host's prerogative and actually ask the first question. And then we will pass it open to questions from the audience. So it's probably a double-barreled question, but firstly, to any of the panel, what did you define as being innovation?
For this purpose, thank you. No feedback this time. We've defined innovation as bringing an open-minded approach to we're looking at and finding the solutions that we need to respond to those transport challenges that we've set. So we're being really open about what we consider. We've set this narrow focus and we're hoping to get some really great solutions that respond to those.
Great.
Can I add to that?
I was going to say we deliberately didn't define innovation. That was very deliberate.
Okay, and a follow-on question from that is, what's the process to determine what the challenges that you would set in the different rounds?
Want me to answer that? So in terms of identifying the challenges, we obviously had line of sight through to the GPS and also our transport priorities. In addition, what we did was we went out across Waka Kotahi, and we actually went out to the different teams and groups and said, help us identify the challenges and problems that we need solving. We also engaged the Ministry of Transport as well. And I guess what we then did was there were some common themes that came through from across the different groups, and we had some assessment criteria in terms of the challenges. So we looked at things like strategic fit. We looked at things around the energy for the challenge. And I guess what I mean by that is the level of support from within Waka Kotahi, because what's going to be really important with this fund is the support that we can give to innovators and applicants. So where there were challenges that had a high level of energy from within Waka Kotahi, we looked very closely at those as well.
They were very closely aligned to the ministry ones as well. So it became obvious to us that there were some clear areas that people were really focused on. So that helped us in our process. But we do have a pool of challenges that we're going to draw from. So while we've set 3 here, we do have a lot waiting in the wings to be released as well. And we'll go through another assessment period, process with them to determine if that's the right time, the round 2 or round 3, when is the right time to release those as well.
And the final one to add to that is, how many rounds do you expect per year?
We expect over the next 2 years to have 3 to 4 rounds, each which will have several challenges attached to them.
Okay, well, with that, I'm going to open it up to questions, and please put your hand up if you want to use the microphone so that you can, online, we'll be able to hear the questions. So if you have any questions with that, and if, okay, yes, Gareth.
Hi, I'm Gareth Robbins from eRoad. You mentioned the 16-week time frame that the funds would be released to a project team or an entity to develop something, but I wondered what the follow-up would be after that 16 weeks and whether you're going to come back after a number of months, years, to measure the efficacy of what has been produced, just to make sure that the technology that is being produced is doing something.
Yeah, so what's really important to us with this is the evaluation and monitoring through the program. So there will be an evaluation at the end of each challenge round, and that will look at not just how the program has performed, because one of the things we want to do is learn as well and iterate and improve this, and we want feedback on how we've run the process and the challenge round. So the first is around evaluating the program. We will also be setting, milestones and deliverables or with the successful applicants for the period of the program. So, and be talking about this is what you will deliver. This is the funding that, we will give you. And then we will subsequently at a later date be going back and looking at who we've funded and the success or otherwise of the initiative. We know that some projects we fund will fail, and that's part of this program of work. We know that.
Great. Okay, I'm going to pass, just hold your question, and we're going to pass it over to Simon, who's monitoring the online questions, to pick up some of the questions from the online attendees.
Thanks, Doug. So here's hopefully a good question to answer. Would you expect to fund multiple parties tackling each challenge?
We're hoping to fund as many applicants as possible. across the challenge process. So the idea is that, the more opportunities that we can fund, the more, we're going to get out at the other end, more successes. So yeah, we're, as many as we can that meet the criteria, that respond to the challenge, and that we believe will have a real impact on the problem. Absolutely.
And alongside that, is there any maximum to the proposal amounts for individuals proposals coming in?
Lee?
Given that you've got a limit of probably 3.5 million for the first round?
We have talked about a figure, and I'll be real honest, we've debated whether we should cap the amount for any individual application. My view is that we want the applicants to tell us what funding they need to progress their innovation. And again, there may be some negotiation around that. We're not going to, it's a $15 million fund, 3.5 million for this first round. When we know that we're going to get more applications for more money than we have. So there will be some conversations that will be had with the applicants around, we could fund you 80% of what you're asking for, and so on. So we're doing it on a case-by-case basis. And again, I go back to, we're really trying not to restrict from the outset what we're going to do, because actually for me, that's killing off some of the innovation. We don't want to do it that way.
Thank you. Over to you, General.
Thank you. Nick Clark from IntDevice. I'm just wondering if you've got any guidance for us. 14 weeks isn't a particularly long time to bring an innovation to life and to prove its worth. Can you share with us your thinking around what you're expecting during that period, and what does success look like in your eyes?
So I guess I go back to, this isn't about necessarily bringing it to life. It's about maturing it and developing it. And so we're being really clear again. And I think, I mentioned before, we're not looking to fund and support an innovation from, ideation or, early concept right through to, say, commercialization. That's not what this is about. This is about unlocking and accelerating it and moving it along. And that means that we may be supporting something in the very early stage of development. We may be supporting an innovator or an innovation in terms of a test and trial environment. We may be supporting it in terms of getting it into the market, in terms of we may be looking at some of our regulatory frameworks. So it's not about from the beginning to the end. It's about a phase of the innovation and supporting to mature it. So the success, what success looks like, will depend on the individual initiative and what the innovator is looking to achieve.
If you people that want to ask a question in the room, can you just sort of indicate you've got questions to ask, and then we can take the microphone around. But I'll pass it over to Simon to the next question online.
Sure, lots of questions coming here, lots of interest, guys. It's exciting stuff, I'm sure. I'll try and knock off a couple in one go here. Just eligibility, is it open to university students doing postgrad, university researchers, professors?
Yes, anyone non-government, basically.
Community, not-for-profit.
CRIs, I don't know if I understand what.
Crown Research.
That's the government.
That's
Not
government.
Not government, so there you go.
Sorry, Crown Research.
Yep, 3 questions there.
Yeah.
Hi, John Joel from Shape Technology. Just with regards to the funding and the applications and any of the rounds, you mentioned about obviously the costs that the applicants would be putting forward, and that there may be a part funding option. Obviously, a lot of barriers to market or entry, or even in a testing environment, is being able to get access to the network and the right people within Waka Kotahi. So is there acknowledgement that there is going to be an internal burden on Waka Kotahi to actually get some of those things off the ground? Because we can put forward a proposal, or any entity can put forward a proposal which says 0 cost to you. However, your internal cost might be quite high. Do you have any comment about how that might be managed and evaluated?
So we have designed the fund to provide both financial and non-financial support, and the sort of things I mentioned before around helping to navigate through Waka Kotahi and other government departments. And I acknowledge that's not easy, always easy. we have identified as one of the assessment criterion feasibility. So we are being realistic about what we can and can't deliver as well. And again, that will be part of the conversations with the applicants around what's possible and what's not possible. But having said that, this initiative has the full support of Waka Kotahi. And so we've been working really closely with a number of different groups within the agency to set this up so that when the applications come in, we can tap into the right people and expertise to get that support.
Thank you.
Next question online, Simon. Well, while you're getting that question, perhaps I'll ask another one in terms of what's the process of you or people being able to talk to you about triaging an idea to see whether you think there's a legs in it in terms of interest? Is that a process that people can talk to you about, or is put a proposal in and you'll assess it at that stage? Or
I'd really encourage people just to put a proposal in. We will go through a bit of a triage process once those proposals are in, but obviously if we wanted to talk to everybody, it just wouldn't be possible, you know. So I would just respond to the challenge as well as you can in the application process and put one in. And obviously if there's some that we feel like, oh gosh, there's real legs here, but maybe it hasn't been articulated quite the way we see it, we could go back to people and have that discussion and pick that up. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think our focus is really on the potential and the potential impact, not the origin or the quality of the application, if that makes sense. We're not looking to knock people out because the application's not great. We'd rather try and work with applicants to make it great.
Yep, I've got a couple of questions here. This should be a relatively simple one. Is the funding only for IT tech solutions, or does it apply to any other innovations?
It applies to anything that responds to the challenges that we've set. So not only IT, not only technology, could be a social innovation.
Great. Do you mind if I squeeze another one in?
yes, I should mention. Sorry, Leone was going to say something first.
Anything, doesn't have to be a tech thing or a widget.
Great. Size, cost versus impact that you're looking at. Are you looking for lots of little concept projects with growth potential, or fewer larger projects with higher potential for impact?
It could be a mix. Yeah.
I think the ideal for us would be a really wonderful, diverse range of small and large. That would be really fantastic, because that's what we're kind of looking at, lots of different ways of doing things. And that's the true nature of this kind of a fund, to be able to do that, you know, that's the potential and the opportunity.
So the gentleman here with the microphone.
Hi, it's Andy Higgs from Central Pass and IMOB. I'm just interested in your comments about the low, you know, given the nature of the challenges, the local transport authorities and how, I know you fund them, so you've probably got quite a lot of influence over them, but yeah, how the line and how whether they're on board and sort of how you navigate that, especially like, for example, the challenge around last mile is obviously a local solution. So how does it work with the transport authorities? It's sort of part one, and part two is, would you encourage us to partner up before, when doing the proposal, or after the proposal? Would you join, you know, sort of say this project's actually linked to this project, so we think you guys should work together, or how do you see that?
Yeah, for me to respond. Yep. So we're definitely interested in proposals that come in where there are partnerships. So I think the information on our website, we've been really clear about who can apply, but we've also acknowledged that there may be some initiatives where there's already some form of partnership with local government. We won't not look at those, because this is also about partnerships and encouraging partnerships across central, local government and the private sector. What we were trying to do was make it really clear that local government couldn't in and of itself apply to the fund. So we would be interested in those proposals, but equally if people come in and don't have partnerships, that's fine as well, because part of what we've said we will do is look for example, it could be a test environment, or look for opportunities to partner with local government as well. So there's a lot of flexibility in this. And again, we're just trying to be really open about that. We will look at each application and work out how we could best support and respond to it.
Do you have another question on Simon, or
I have many questions here.
I should mention actually before you go, Simon, that we actually have over 100 people, or 150 originally intended online. So there's quite a big group online outside. So
well over 150 tuning in today, and others keen for the recording, obviously, as well. Again, I'm going to try and knock off a couple here in one go. If you were successful for one funding period, would you then be able to apply again for another funding period? And yeah, let's just leave it at that.
Okay, so potentially if your second application, so to speak, responded to a challenge. So remember that each challenge round or funding round will have different challenges. So there's nothing to stop people applying for different funding rounds, but whatever they're submitting has to respond to the challenge. If it's about additional funding from from the first funding round, if that makes sense, that's when we go back into looking at how else that innovation could be supported potentially outside of the innovation fund. Does it make sense? Yeah. Okay.
And is there any limitations in regards to the, that can be CapEx, OpEx, or services in terms of the funding mechanisms? So it's going to be across all spectrum.
Yeah, again, we'd be looking at what people are asking for and what they want funded. Yeah.
Yep, your turn.
Kia ora, thank you so much for today. Darren Wu from Becca. I was just wondering, I know that you probably don't want to distract from the current three challenges, but has there been any thought about releasing some of the potential challenges in future so that industry can start thinking ahead about those as well?
Great idea. Thanks. Yeah, it's a good idea.
We'll release them as soon as we've basically finalized them, if that makes sense. Like, we're not trying to hold them back. We'll keep them. We are just, this is the first round. We've landed on 3. We've got some others that we're looking at, and we will try and get those out as soon as we can. But what we don't want to do is obviously put out challenges and then go, actually, no, it's something else now. So we need to be really clear that those are the challenges for the next round of funding. So again, a little bit of work to do internally, and we're already looking at those challenges now. Yeah.
So we haven't made any decisions. I think that's the point.
Yeah. A question from online, Simon?
Sorry if this one's been answered already. How is the total funding pool allocated across the different rounds?
Partly we're guided by the challenges. So but it's probably going to be a reasonably even spread. If you think about it, $15 million, we've released 3.5 million for this first round. So be relatively even across the 4 if we get up to 4 challenges. But it is very much determined by the type of challenges we're putting out there.
Question from me. Yep. Oh, sorry. No, it's, somebody's already got the microphone. So.
Can you? Oh, yeah, there. Dylan Fernandez with CAPS Trafficom. Third part of the challenge, which related to helping underserved communities with, and one example was with clean technologies. I was wondering if, could we please get some more information on that aspect of the challenge, please?
Sorry, what was the last bit you just said? And you said underserved communities and
I think an example on the slide had something to do with clean technologies.
Okay. So in terms of there's more information on the website with each challenge, which provides more context, and also will link you through to some reference material that might support the development of your proposal. But I'm not sure whether one of the things we're really clear that, or we're keen not to do, is to actually start to talk to the sector about proposals, because that's the challenge out to the sector. You tell us what you think will be a good response to this challenge. So we've been really careful on the challenges and how we've described them, not to kind of direct or influence the response.
question, yes.
From Beam Mobility here. My question was partly answered, but essentially some of the responses will linked quite closely to multiple challenges, i.e. first and last mile in rural or underserved areas. If you sort of had to pick between the two, is there any sort of guidance on which one, or do you think one will have less responses, so go for that one, or just the one that suits best?
Again, I don't see any issue with actually saying we think this solution could respond to one or more of the challenges, because again, it's about getting the benefit for the transport system. And I just want to emphasize, we're not trying to trip people up. It's not it's not exact. It's not. So if you've got a response that you think actually this will respond to one or more challenges, in fact, we might go, awesome. This is one we're really interested in. If we've got responses coming in that or proposals coming in that respond to multiple challenges, that's great.
Simon, over to you for next question.
Sure. So just representing that we've got an international audience joining us today as well. I've got a couple of questions here. Is the fund designed purely for New Zealand-based innovators? I think that's a no. If a concept is having success internationally, but a company wants to test it out in New Zealand, would the fund be available to them?
Again, if it's a response to, so the issue isn't around the international company, it's got to respond to the challenge and be of potential benefit to the New Zealand transport system. And testing and trialling is part of the program. Yeah.
Do they need to have an existing entity in New Zealand at all?
No.
Great, that's good.
Do we have another question on the floor? Sorry.
Yeah. Adrian from Carbon Block. Just actually back to the question that before about multiple challenges. So if you had a platform and you applied for a challenge and that same piece of technology could also apply to another challenge, would that be something that would be acceptable?
So I just want to be really clear. So what you're asking is that you could put an application in response to a challenge, and then a subsequent challenge might come out, which that platform might respond
Could solve, yeah.
To. I think we would be thinking about the potential of that platform to deliver a benefit for that particular challenge. So we're not saying no to people who have received funding previously, but I think we would be needing, look, again, I'm just going to be really honest. This isn't about, we don't want people to try and be clever by resubmitting the same proposal under a different challenge to get additional funding. But again, it's case by case.
Simon, you got another one online?
Yep, sure. I'm doing quite well here, knocking off multiple in one go here. A couple of questions here on the first mile, last mile, small vehicles. Is there going to be assistance for anybody who wants to trial a new style of vehicle that is not currently legal on New Zealand roads?
So one of the things we were actually doing yesterday was working with the regulatory team within Waka Kotahi to define a process that we could apply for new novel vehicle types that come in to enable testing and trialing. Now that said, usually what would happen is, again, a decision would be based around where the trial would take place. There would probably have to be a safety management. It would depend again on the test trial environment, but there is certainly the ability, depending on the trial, to exempt from current land transport regulations. Yeah, and that's why there's the ability in New Zealand to test and trial autonomous vehicles, for example.
I'll follow on a question with regards to, is there any process of, if you think the proposal comes in and a second stage, you think actually these people should be talking to each other, Is that part of the process that you'll actually help potentially bring teams together as well?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we'll check with the party that they're okay for us to do that. But that to me is that connector role that I talked about, which is, this is about collaboration. So if we can see something where we think that might benefit from a partnership with X, we'll do that.
Yep, sorry, you're on the phone. Yep.
Hello, Daniel Hoyne from CAPS Trafficcom. Thank you for today. I have a question around the pool of challenges. Is there the openness to consider, say, the unknown challenge that might arise from previous rounds? And then the other part of this is there the openness also for potentially establishing a test bed, which is a follow-on from what you've just asked there, that we might be able to build on previous technologies and add to, and create a bit of an incubation effect in a sense?
So I'm going to answer your second part of your question first, which is a second part of this program is looking at some kind of test trial environment, which could be one or several locations in New Zealand. It could comprise of something like an intelligent corridor. It could be another sort of environment where we might be testing different mobility options, for example. And so what we want to do once we've launched this and got this underway is actually start to look at how we might put some more structure around a live test environment or environments, so that it's less ad hoc, is the way I would describe it at the moment. Daniel, sorry, your first question was?
The openness to, say, the unknown challenge that might arise out of previous challenges, where you would discover, oh, there's a whole new realm of possibility or problem that we've discovered as a result of X.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
Brilliant.
we don't have a set list of challenges at the moment. We've got a pool of challenges that we will review and assess, but they're not, we can add to those. There may be other challenges that come along that we think would be better ones to put out to the sector. Yeah.
It's Gareth from E-Road again. You mentioned that this aligns to the NLTP for 21 to 24. What happens after that? And as we approach that 24 deadline, are you looking for successes out of this one to lean into what the funding is going to be for the next NLTP period?
Pretty much what you just said, Gareth. So the intention is that this will become a permanent function within Waka Kotahi, but obviously what we'll be doing is evaluating and monitoring the success of this program. And yes, we do only have funding for this NLTP, but the intention would be to put up a business case to get additional funding to carry it on. And I think if you look at the history of something like Streets for People, that's essentially what they did, which was started out with a fund for one NLTP, and then they've grown it and continued it. Yeah.
Another related question to that is that what does Waka Kotahi see as being the outcomes that you want to see towards the end of a 16-week period, for example, of an intense trial or project? And you talked about the potential sort of public communication evidence aspects coming out of that. Can you explain a little bit more about what should that be costed within the proposal, or is that external that Waka Kotahi will come to be involved with that, or should that be costed in the proposal?
Sorry. Actually, I'm not sure. I just want to be, I'm really clear what you mean there, Doug. So at the end of the 16 weeks, your question is, sorry, can you just ask me that?
If you're thinking about leading the innovation to an outcome, you're interested in the outcome and the impact of that innovation. So what's your expectations in regards to how that would be, is Waka Kotahi wanting to be involved in that final output, or is it going to be just see what happens?
So the actual proposal, the application process asks the applicants, the innovators, to outline for us and articulate what success would look like through this period of funding. So we're asking people to tell us what are the milestones to be measured, so that we can see what is the impact of this investment in your innovation. So we're being really clear that you are developing this. You may have a very small 16-week period that you think you can take it to another level with a bit of a kickstart of this support or this funding or this testing environment. And you can tell us what success might look like if you get to prove that concept or that prototype's part for 16 weeks. So we're leaving it up to the innovators, the experts, to tell us what does that look like. And we're hoping to be able to take some evaluation from that later. We'll be asking, we'll be evaluating the program. We'll be asking, going back and talking to innovators and saying, was this useful the way we did this? What are the things that we could improve for the next round? I mean, that's all part of the design and innovation process. And we're going to be turning that on ourselves and making ourselves do that too, because the outcome is to get more funding after the 2 years. And so we need to have all that data to show what we did, who really progressed from this, was it successful, what does that look like in an ideal world if we were to take it forward, what do we need to do that? Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
And I think what success looks like will differ from project to project. That's the thing. We're going to get a range of different initiatives that come in. So it will differ for each project. Okay.
Yep, and so perhaps a follow-on aspect to that, given we're running out of time shortly, is what happens if you get, like, for example, the other funding pots in government is way oversubscribed already. There's the success rates for different proposals can be up to 1 in 20, 1 in 30 in terms of people putting in proposals. So if that's a demonstration of success for you as putting out all of these innovative ideas. But one of the concerns the sectors have is how much time doesn't get funded. So is that going to so I'm picking up on what you're saying, is that you do want an argument to increase this fund? Is that part of the, because I think you will be well oversubscribed for interest in the room and online.
I don't know if I'd put it as we want an argument, but we will be gathering evidence, Doug, in relation to the number of applications we receive. We will certainly be looking at the applications that we can't fund, but we thought potentially was benefit in those. We will be collecting all of that data. And yes, we will be looking at it and using it to potentially support what we do in terms of what we do next with the program.
Yeah. I realise we've come to the end of time. Is there got one last question on Simon that you're going to squeeze in? Simon from online?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to continue my my form of combining questions here. The assistance that Waka Kotahi might provide in terms of connecting people with partners. I've got a question from an NGO saying we couldn't possibly scale up on our own. Will you help us connect with people if our concept is good enough? And somebody from international saying, would you help us connect with local partners to run something here?
Yes.
So that was part of the triaging I was saying, is that if people have ideas but they don't know who to talk to in the New Zealand sector, you're going to help. They can ask questions to help with that. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Good. Okay, great. That's a yes.
That's a yes. That's a yes.
Yes. Okay, well, I think I'm very conscious of time and we've now run out of time. So I would like to draw that to a close, but I personally just want to, in summary and sort of thoughts, congratulate Waka Kotahi on bringing this fund to the market. It has, I know, been a long incubation time. I remember having discussions with previous ministers some years ago about this, so it's great to actually see it come. I think you are going to be oversubscribed significantly, so that's a positive thing in one way, but New Zealand also, I think, very much underinvests in terms of research and innovation. So we do need to keep challenging that aspect of it. And we need to determine what that innovation means for New Zealand in the New Zealand context, which is very different to some of the contexts that we have overseas. So we do, so I congratulate again. Thank you again for all three of you to come to speak to us today. And with that, so if you can put your hands together for Liz, Lee and Leone. And I'm sure that there'll be some questions that in the milling around for those in the room. Thank you for those that have come online and for the questions. We will collate, is that right, Simon? We will get the questions if we didn't cover your questions online. I won't say that Waka Kotahi would necessarily go through them all and answer them, but we will pass them on. So we'll look forward to seeing some great innovation proposals coming to market that will be funded by and helped in terms of industry. So thank you for coming along. Hope you've enjoyed your day. It's great to be able to see people in 3 dimensions rather than 2. And we look forward to seeing you all around, those that are here, coffee and tea. Simon, did you want to say something? Or
Yeah, just to find a few words from me. We will pass on those questions, just confirming that the recording will become available. The presentation that Lee made today will become available. And I think you possibly want to push the other webinar you have coming up on the 25th of May as well.
Yeah, next Wednesday, the 25th at 12:30. All the details are on the website to sign up for that. And then we'll be covering a little bit of what we've done today, but there might be some other details.
The website is?
Just if you go to the Waka Kotahi website, there's a link there to Hoiki angitū.
Innovation at NZTA. .govt.nz. There you go. You can find out more there. And hope you all found today useful. I certainly did. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming and spending your time here and learning a lot from this. So we will close the things. Please come in and enjoy the whatever's there. I'm not quite sure what's there. So let's have a look. And thank you for those coming online.